think. Are we back? Just had a weird glitch there. I hope we are back. Cool. Well, anyone can feel free to chime in the chat with questions or suggestions, whatever. But okay, cool. Hey, Matt. I think my internet just glitched out for a second there. There is just like a tiny bit of lag between the chat and like the stream, so you'll see a bit of a delayed response from me. But whatever, it's not that bad. Cool. Well, let's get started. Again, feel free to pop in the chat if you got questions or suggestions or whatever. But yeah, I'm just going to be going through this mix live for you. For those of you who are in the Pro Tools class, this is going to look really familiar. So what I have here, we're working on the song Private Moon by the band Carol. And what I have here is basically just the weather vane basic setup for mixing. I have not grouped any tracks. I haven't organized my session. All I've done is the color coding and the mix groups. Yeah. And for those of you who are not in the Pro Tools class, if you're watching this now or later or whatever, this setup that we're going to be using is the sort of like patented, well, not patent, I don't know if they patented it, the weather vane mix roadmap method. And essentially the idea is to take all of your individual tracks, because in this song we've got 35 tracks that we're working with, and funnel them through sort of different mix groups depending on what type of instrument they are. So that's sort of the general idea. I'm not going to explain too much about it because really this live stream is mostly for my students in that class. But if you're here and you got questions, feel free to ask. Cool. So I got my mix groups set up, and that's it. So our first step here is I'm going to go through and I'm going to create a couple submixes for a couple different things. And while I'm doing that, creating those submixes using aux inputs, I'm also going to be going through and adjusting levels and pan and kind of putting together a rough mix here. So hopefully this all works and you'll be able to hear what I'm doing in Pro Tools. I think I set it up correctly, but it's been a while since I set up a live stream. So bear with me if it's not perfect. Cool. So here we go. Start at the beginning of the song. I do have my markers in place to sort of indicate which all the different sections of the song. So I can use my hotkey here, period command or period 1 period. You can see it in the keycaster down below. To go to the intro of the song. So let's hit play. And again, we're going to be setting up submixes. We're going to be panning. We're going to be adjusting levels. And typically in my personal workflow, I typically do this like all at the same time. But it can be helpful. I'm not going to deny that it can be helpful to, maybe take this a little bit slower and do things one at a time. But because we're going to try and mix this whole song in 3 hours. So we don't got time for that ish. So here we go. And I apologize for everybody. Like, you're going to hear my breathing really, really loud. the software for the Antelope Zen Tour has a lot of like really cool built-in effects. And that's what you're hearing. That's why my voice sounds so clear and pristine and radio ready. But the gate that comes with these plugins built into the audio interface sucks. And for some reason it like just constantly distorts everything. So I can't use the gate. So you're going to hear me going. It's going to be really annoying. But anyways. And theoretically, we're both listening to the same mix. So I will hear how loud my voice is in relation to all of that stuff as well.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the road. In a house this big, who has the time? Up in my private moon wandering.
Okay, that's cool. So one thing I just noticed is there's this clav sound in the sort of electronic drum kit, and that has this kind of cool like syncopated rhythm, right? So I'm going to try and keep that as a highlighted feature in this mix because I think that's really cool. Really know what's going on with these two. There's like doubles of all these synthesizer tracks, but I don't know what the difference between these two tracks is. Okay, so these are two distinct sounds. So I'm going to relabel these so that like I don't have to keep wondering what these are. I'm just going to call this DX7 Cheesy E Piano because that's what it kind of sounds like to me. Right, it's got that kind of like Rhodes-ish thing, but the Yamaha DX7 is like an early... Not early, but it's like a classic 80s synthesizer. This sounds like the Ice Piano preset on my Yamaha SY77, which is like the newer version of the DX7, so that's what I'm going to call it. That's the Juno doing Juno stuff. This just sounds like the same synth, but you can tell they're different because when I pan them opposite of each other, it widens the stereo image of the sound a lot. Right, so it's got that big sort of immersive sound in there. So I'm just going to call this left, the other one right. Because I think that sounds cool when they're panned out like that. These ones might, change or do something else. Go back to the first verse.
Used to know everyone, now this party is empty. And
signal in this ace kick track here is really, really low. So I'm going to use clip gain to kind of bump that up a little bit. So clip gain allows me to increase the level in this track here, like pre-fader, pre-inserts, anything like that. So it's just kind of like increasing the raw level of this clip here. So that can be really handy for a situation like this because I think like I just need a little bit more gain out of this in general. There we go. This song in particular has a lot of sub-frequency energy. I know from just working on it before, but you can kind of hear it in that kick and in this big-ass Moog bass sound. So I'm going to have to bounce off of my headphones at a certain point and like check this mix with my subwoofer. And that's just an important thing that I need to do here. I'm going to go ahead and create a couple stereo aux inputs for to use as buses for these two synth sounds. Because I think both of like these two sounds are tied together, these two sounds are tied together, and so I want to be able to process them together. So we're just going to create two new stereo auxes. First one's going to be called DX7, DX1 lead, because the rhythm keyboard part is also DX7. Make sure not to forget to solo safe your aux inputs. Bada bing, bada boom. These are both going to go through the key mix there. And then these two will go through the DX7 lead. Bada bing, bada boom. Then we'll need to figure out what this is. Okay, so this is like what? Just like a big weird... Yeah. Okay, so these two tracks are kind of similar, but they're not really inherently linked to each other. So I'm going to keep these as separate things, and I'm not going to route them through any like submix auxes there, because I think like they do similar things, but they're different enough that I might want to do different processing on these two tracks. So I don't feel like I need to route them through a submix. Okay, so these two tracks here are clearly just pretty much only ever weird ambient guitar stuff, right? No matter where I go in the song, it's kind of all the same. So I'm going to rename these tracks Guitar Feedback 1 and Guitar Feedback 2. And I'm going to keep these separate. Again, I'm not going to put them through a subgroup because I might want to do some different stuff with each one of those feedback tracks to kind of like make them into like a big epic swirly mass there. And then what's going on with these guys? Ooh. That's a pretty sound. Whoa. Trippy, man. So these are kind of ambience tracks. Guitar ambience 1 and 2. And again, like right now what I'm doing is I'm trying to wrap my head around this song as a whole. So I'm just letting my mind kind of like care. I'm not really starting mixing the song yet. This is all organizational stuff. So I'm just like letting my mind kind of like, I'm letting myself get distracted and just kind of like pay attention to things that interest me, that grab me in the song immediately. And then once I get this all organized, I'm going to kind of like reset my brain. I'm going to take a second. I'm going to have a drink of my smoothie, whatever. And then I'll start like shifting my brain into like full mixdown mode, and we'll get into that. But for now, I'm just organizing. I'm wrapping my head around this song. I'm listening to all the fun, cool sounds that they've collected for this recording. And I'm just having fun. I'm just having a good time.
I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private.
I don't know why these are on two different tracks. This seems stupid. So I'm going to cut that out and I'm going to put it on there, and then I'm going to delete this. Because that's the same guitar sound and part. Like, why would you do that? ¿Por qué? I do not understand. Okay. What is guitar 2? Okay. So you'll notice that as I'm going through this, if like something sounds exactly the same as another thing, I'll pan it opposite of the thing that sounds like it's the same thing, because your brain can tell if it's not exactly the same thing better if the two sounds are panned opposite of each other. If they're both panned to the same place, your brain kind of meshes those two sounds into one sound and it becomes one thing. So like if I had both of these panned to the center here, it sounds like that is one sound. But as soon as I pan this out, right, we can hear the sound open up and we can tell that that is two distinct sounds happening right there. So it could be two takes of the exact same sound kind of thing. I am going to create a stereo submix for those because I think it'll be cool to like have a little bit more ambience on those two tracks. Guitar slide, because that's what it is. So it's going to go out of to the guitar mix, and then this is going to go into that track there. Yep, there we go. And then this guitar one track, I'm pretty sure is the outro guitar lick. Yep. One of these must have a phaser or a chorus on there. Oh no, they both have that effect. And so again, these sound kind of like they're the same thing because they're both in the center of the mix right now. But as soon as I pan these out, you'll hear that these are two distinct things. right, you can hear that the sound opens up there, and that means that these are two different sounds. Okay, so I'm gonna, again, create a new stereo aux input for these. Guitar outro, because that's kind of what that is. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, and I'll point this out right now. You might notice that the meters that I use for my individual tracks here have like kind of a weird layout that might not look like yours do in Pro Tools. That's because when I'm mixing, I use, I think Bob Katz came up with this system, who's like a legendary mastering engineer. This is called the K-weighted system. I'm not using it like 100% how it's intended to use, because it's supposed to be used so that like when you play a like white noise or whatever out of a track and that white noise is metering at 0, that is 80 decibels in your room. Which I'm using headphones, so I can't really measure the decibel level of like what's coming out of my headphones right now. But anyways, the kind of general idea is that you want to be leaving yourself plenty of headroom on all of your individual tracks, so that when the all of those signals are summed together, you're not in danger of clipping the output. So if I'm aiming for each one of these mix groups over here to have like a level around 0 on these meters, 0 on these meters represents basically like -14 in the classic Pro Tools sample peak meters here. So if I'm aiming to have my mix groups all peaking around 0 dB here, then with each one of those tracks, I have 14 decibels of headroom. So if I'm combining multiple signals, so like say this is peaking at 0 on here, that's -14 dB FS, add the key mix on there, and theoretically that might double the amplitude if they're both exactly the same signal, whatever, which they wouldn't be, but if I add those together, that's an extra 6 decibels, right? And then I add another thing that's an extra 6 decibels. So this whole system is designed to make it so that you avoid clipping on your master bus and in any one of your individual buses. So it's a pretty cool system once you get the hang of using it. I don't expect anybody like in my classes to be using this just yet. In general, you just want to be shooting for like about 12 to 14 decibels of headroom in your mix groups, and then you want to have at least like 4 to 8 decibels of headroom on your master main output there. So you're entirely sure that you're not clipping anything out, because when you start clipping your master output, you start to destroy the dynamics of the mix that you're working on. So if the kick drum is clipping because it's so loud, it's going to get squashed down so that the difference between the loudness of that kick drum and like the bass or something like that is not going to be able to come through clearly. So gain staging is really, really important. So just be paying attention to your levels in your mix groups as you're going through this. because that's one of the benefits of using these mix groups is that you have these meters here that can tell you if you're getting in danger of improper gain staging. So you'll see me constantly like sort of bounce back to these to check the levels there. And so far we're sitting very good. We have plenty of headroom in here. Interesting. So I'm going to, at some point, need to like figure out how to distinguish these two sounds from each other a little bit better, but we'll get there. Hear my nose squeaking here. You'll also notice, again, that I'm using like really exaggerated panning in this stage of the process, just so, everything in this mix is really obvious to me as I'm going through this here. Go ahead and use couple stereo aux inputs for submixes for my overheads and room mics. Oops. Oh no, I made mono. What a silly person. 2. Stereo, aux inputs. Again, feel free to ask questions in the chat if you got them. Like if you're like, how the fuck are you doing this so fast? I am happy to explain any of that. You'll see like in Keycaster that I'm using a lot of my modifier hotkeys to like do multiple things at one time. So in general, that's how I'm able to like cruise through this process so quickly. And you'll get there eventually. This is why I say that you should constantly be practicing your hotkeys, though, because the only way to get faster at using these hotkeys is by practicing them all the time for everything. For people in my classes, I try to always say like, never do anything that you could do a hotkey not using that hotkey. Try to do everything that you can using these hotkeys because, like I said, like when people are looking for interns and looking for that kind of stuff, they're looking for people who have these types of Pro Tools skills. Okay, I think we are just about like organized with this session here. We've got all our submixes set up, I think. So I'm going to just go ahead and hit play from the very beginning of the song. Again, I'm using my hotkey to go back to the first marker in the song, which I know is the intro here. One of the benefits of using this in this system here, and then also having a keyboard with a numpad, is that I don't have to be in my edit window to go to a different section of the song. Like if I know the second instrumental is number 6, you can check these things by going to your memory location or like double clicking on a memory location. If I know that's number 6 and that's where I'm trying to go in the song, I can quickly go there using my hotkey. Right? So that's pretty cool. Like, I don't have to be in my edit window to move through the song here.
I'll be up in my private.
And again, that's like one of the major benefits of using this system here. Hold on, let me put my phone on mute because people are trying to hit me up. I don't want that. Okay. So let's start at the beginning of the song and we'll just listen through. Just like we did in class, I'm going to make some notes. So I got my little notepad open here. And yeah, we'll just see what we hear.
I used to know everyone. Now this party is empty. And we're both drunk. And we're watching TV.
Clay. Clav.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. We live on parallel hills, but I can tell when you're home in the night.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too.
Moving circles outside.
I think a little bit of like saturation on the ace tone kick. That's what that is, by the way. The ace tone rhythm mate or something like that. It's like a weird old drum machine from the 60s, I think.
I'll be up in my private moon
but just a touch of extra harmonics on that will, I think, help it cut through.
I'll be up in my private moon, wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
Matt, I like how like your solution to everything is like a little bit of saturation. Which in general is also one of my solutions to everything. It's just like, oh, it's not exciting enough. Distort it. Oh, hey, Nate. Yeah, I think this outro section could be really cool. Because the instrumentation in this section is like really cyclical. Everything's kind of swirling anyways, so I think we'll want to really like dial in that kind of like swirly effect. So the real solution to everything in this mix is to just do this. And then it's fixed. We're done. Print it. For real though, I think I'm actually gonna have the song eventually devolve into that because I think that could actually be really cool. So let's make a note of that. Outro devolves into chouse. But for now, I'm going to bypass this. But I do think it'll be really cool to like, yeah, eventually just like have what we can do is eventually like automate this drive control here and the mix so that the mix eventually like comes, it just devolves into utter chaos as the saturation overwhelms it. Oh, Jake, you're here too. Wow. I'm so happy. You want more saturation? We could always, use... Now I'm just doing stuff for the memes. This is the amp sim that I use for like everything because it's amazing. But it has, I downloaded this emulation of a Sun Model T. So I think, yeah, if we just put this on the mix and then, max everything out. There we go. Perfect. Again, it sounds actually pretty cool. Whatever. We'll figure out a way to integrate this into the actual mix later. Actually, don't want bias amp though, because you can't. There's no mix knob on bias amp, so I couldn't like slowly blend that in over time. I guess I could use a parallel bus with just that, but for now, it's going to be easier to achieve using Decapitator. And we only have, 2 hours and 15 minutes left. So the Sun Model T is a really cool amp. If I had a couple $1,000s, I would probably buy one, but I don't. Okay. I think we're sitting pretty good with this so far. Oh, hi, Autumn. Oh, hi. It feels weird to like live stream because I watch a lot of live streams and everybody else's live stream is so much like more glamorous, right? Because like people have the little Patreon animations or whatever, like the tips from Twitch, and yeah, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. It's very basic for me, but I feel like it should be more glamorous. Cool. So I think we still also need to find kind of what the focal point of this song is, so that we can kind of find a place to start on here. Like my natural inclination as a drummer is almost always to start with the drums and get the drums sounding really beefy. But I mean, honestly, the drums don't even come in until halfway through the song. So we kind of have to think about the key elements of the song. I think the DX7, this like main DX7 line is one of these key elements to the song that we really have to focus in on and getting sounding really good. And I think maybe the vocals too, because those are really like the only things that remain constant throughout the entire song. So I think dialing those two sounds in first will help us focus in this kind of like really ambient floaty mix here. And then I think we'll do the drums because the drums are really important. And in the weather vane mix of this song, I think the drums actually kind of sound like garbage. And don't really like fit the vibe of the song. It kind of seems like they put that aspect of the mix off too late, and so they're not the way that they feel in their mix there doesn't really like fit the song, I don't think. Before we dive into this though, I really need to pee, so I will be right back in like 60 seconds. Musical chairs. I start every morning with a cup of coffee and a smoothie, which is great, I think, for me, but it leads to lots of bathroom breaks when like the first half of your day's intake consists entirely of liquids. damn fine cup of joe. Okay, so first things first, let's work on the main keyboard line here and the vocals.
I used to know everyone. Now this party is empty. And we're both drunk. And we're watching TV.
So I think the easy cop-out thing to do here would be to, just like we did in class the other day, slap on like a stereo chorus on this DX7 here, and we can try that out, see how it feels to us. Try the old oldie Juno chorus.
I used to know everyone.
That's almost too cheese though. Try a different thing out. Yeah. That's pretty nice. One thing I don't like about this plugin is that it like attenuates the signal when it's bypassed. That's pretty annoying. Or not when it's bypassed, when it's on. What else we got? What else could we use? So much modulation. Microshift is one of my favorite things. Microshift is an emulation of a couple different pieces of equipment, but one of them is the Roland Dimension D, which is a really cool kind of stereo processor. And it can be a lot more subtle than the other choruses that I was working with. So I kind of really like that about this. And you can change this focus control right here. Essentially puts a high pass in the signal flow in the wet mix, so that the modulation only affects frequencies above whatever you set here. And then detune controls the amount of pitch modulation that you have, and delay controls the sort of time shift in the modulated signal. But yeah, it's a really, really cool signal. Plugin, and I use it all the time, especially on stuff like this or like backing vocals. It can add like a really nice, just subtle stereo width to a mix. Yeah, I like that. So essentially what this is doing is it's taking the high frequencies, because I have the focus set so high, it's taking all the frequencies above whatever I set here and pushing it out to the sides a little bit. So it allows me to keep the sort of like low mid focus of this keyboard sound in the center of the mix, but then push out all those high frequencies to the side, which theoretically should then make more space for the vocal, which has a lot of high frequency content in there. should allow the vocal to cut through a little bit better. Yeah, I like that a lot. Then I'm going to slap a little bit of EQ on here. This has quickly become like one of my favorite series of plugins of all time. Plugin Alliance is the company that makes, or not makes these, but like distributes these plugins. And I have a bunch of these, and I'll actually use the SSL channel strip for this one for a little bit more hi-fi, kind of 80s vibe. But they're essentially emulations of a channel strip in a really nice mixing console, like the SSL 4000 G series mixing console. Like, these things are so crazy expensive, but they're so nice. And these are like painstakingly modeled, and they sound amazing, and they're super easy and intuitive to use. And I can't say enough about how much I love these plugins here. But essentially what I want to do with this EQ is just brighten up the sound a little bit so that it cuts through in this mix better. Yeah, Autumn, this will get saved, and it'll just be online forever. And again, I'm not going to need like that much low end on this, so I'm using this high pass filter here. And then when I used this high shelf control here to boost the high frequencies on this, there's a lot of background hiss coming from the synthesizer itself. A lot of these old synths are kind of like this. Like, you hear all that. So I just used this low pass filter to kind of dial that back. There we go. And again, you'll see me doing this thing that I repeatedly do in class, and I do this in my own personal mixing too, like all the time, where I am intentionally exaggerating a frequency range like way beyond what I would actually manipulate it by in the mix, just so that my ear can kind of like grab on to what that frequency range sounds like, and then dial it back into a more acceptable range. And again, it's really important to do that, because if I hadn't done that, I would have had no idea that there's all that like high frequency kind of garbage in there. So really important to like let your ears sort of like adapt to the mix that you're working on. So like when I bypass this plugin, the low end of this DX7 sound is kind of fighting with that Moog bass, and I don't like that. But when I engage it, it just clears up the sound a little bit and lets that Moog bass be what it wants to be. Okay, now let's zoom out.
There's an echo about it, one that's twice
just a pretty subtle change there, so I can bypass these and play this back for you.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
Again, this might even be too much high frequency boost.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
Yeah. Cool. That feels pretty good to me. Now, this also needs a little bit of ambience. I think it needs just like a touch of reverb or something like that. So I want to have reverb on this, but I want to also, because this particular sound and the vocal, like I was saying, happen consistently throughout the song. It's one of the only two like really consistent sounds in the song. I want to make sure that both of these sounds feel like they're in the same ambient space, essentially. So instead of using an insert on here to just like slap some reverb on there real quick, again, I'm going to set up a reverb bus, and I'm going to send signal from both this DX7 and the lead vocal over there to that bus, so that they can both have the type of ambience that I want here. So I'm going to set up a stereo aux, and this is going to be called my room verb, because this is going to essentially, my goal for this is to like create an artificial room for these two tracks to live in. And again, remember that everything has to get funneled through your two bus. So I end up using the etc. mix a lot for routing effects through, unless it's an effect that's on a very specific, that's only on a specific number of tracks. And then create a send here to that new room verb, turn it up, create a send here to that same room verb, turn it up. If you hold down shift and click on this, like anything in Pro Tools, well, not anything, but like any of these sort of windows like here that pop out, like if I wanted to keep this plugin window open, if you hold down shift when you're clicking on it, it will like hold that window open. So if I hold down shift and click on both of these sends, it'll just pop these open permanently, and I can just kind of have them out here, and I can dial in the levels of each one of these sends without having to like continually like pop back and like open one of these or the other one. So that can be pretty handy. Then we need to pick a room. I don't 100% know like what sort of atmosphere I'm imagining here. I'll just start with my convolution reverb. This is not a very good convolution reverb, actually, if you're looking to buy, and it is better than that, but it's not, I don't think it's really worth the money. Just my personal review of this little thing here. So what can we do? Do a rock room. I don't want anything that's like a big crazy reverb sound, but I want enough ambience there to like make it feel good. And I'm going to solo both of these tracks.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
That's actually really nice.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
Yeah, I actually love that. Wow. that was totally happenstance. I did not plan this at all. I had no idea that was going to be like that. The only thing that sucks about this is that, like, if you look at the meters here, this reverb is way stronger in the right channel for some reason.
And we're both drunk, and we'll watch.
Which kind of sucks. I could switch it into mono mode.
And we're both drunk, and
But it just doesn't have that same sort of like width to it. I wonder if there's... Yeah, that's it. There's no other version of that same reverb that I can access. That's too bad.
and we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
Well, it's not the end of the world, and I like this reverb so much that it's not going to kill me to keep that that way. We're just going to need to keep that in mind later in our mix, because that means that the vocal is kind of inherently going to be a little bit stronger in the right channel because of this reverb. But it's not the end of the world.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
Yeah, I just like that, the sound, the timbre of that reverb so much that it's worth it to me to like have it be a little bit wonky. There might be some way, I feel like there's probably a plugin that I can use to adjust this. Trim. Yeah. This is kind of a different feature in Pro Tools that I don't really talk about in class that much, but it's pretty cool. Pro Tools has the ability to either have like multi-channel stereo plugins or multiple mono stereo plugins. And when you have a multiple mono stereo plugin, you can actually unlink the left and the right sides. So I can actually just go in here and turn down the right side of the stereo image with this track here.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV. And we're both drunk.
There we go. Problem solved. So just a little example of like outside the box thinking. It's like the thing that is most important when you're working on a mix is that you like the sound of it and that it fits the song, that it serves the song, right? So that we have all these tools, and you just need to think a little bit outside the box to be like, okay, well, like, what can I do to make that sound work because I really love that sound? So, you know, using something unorthodox, well, not unorthodox, but a little bit like outside the standard, using a multi-mono plugin to just turn down the left side or right side of the track, solved that problem. And now I can use this beautiful, lush sounding reverb in my mix and not have it like wonk out the stereo mix here.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
Yeah, that feels like perfect. So now I'm gonna do a little bit of processing. I'll do my like kind of standard processing on the vocals here, but instead of like I showed in class using a bunch of different plugins for this, I'm gonna use this same SSL channel strip here because it has everything that I was talking about when I was showing my vocal chain. So it all starts with a little bit of EQ. And this button down here allows me to make it so that you can't see that because my face is in the way. This button down here allows me to switch it so that the equalizer is before the dynamics in the channel strip, which is what I want.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
Need to go to a different section of this song where the vocals actually happen more.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the.
But I do not want to hear these.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
There we go. So I'm just adding a little bit of like what we call in the industry air, which I think is just one of the stupidest ways of describing sound. But essentially we're just like adding a little bit of spice on the top to just kind of like help this vocal tickle our ears a little bit more and just like cut through the mix a little bit better.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
I know, Jake, it's funny that I'm like, I hate this reverb. I'd never use it on anything. And then I'm like, ooh, this is perfect. I guess I just haven't played around with the presets enough to like really know what's good and what's not in it.
I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
I think all of us who have been through the audio program at Fairhaven kind of got spoiled by having access to Altiverb, which is just like one of the, like hands down, the best convolution reverb that's ever been made. So like coming from that, I guess, yeah, east-west spaces is not nearly as good as that. You don't have as much flexibility in shaping the sound, but sometimes you just find gems. Reverb is such a weird thing. Like each preset can be so different from the next preset that you might pop something on and then like mess around with that plugin for a little bit and then write it off for like a year, like I did with that. And then you pull it up once and you're like, oh, now it makes sense to me why like people like this.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
So what I'm doing here with the vocal is just giving it a little bit of a smiley face kind of curve. So exaggerating just a little bit of the low frequencies. This only works in combination with using this high pass filter here. Like these two things have to function in conjunction with each other, or else the vocal can get really muddy.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
Just a little bit too much reverb for while I'm trying to dial in this EQ.
In a house this big, who has the time?
So we're lucky in this mix in that this feels like a really, really good vocal take, and the pairing of the microphone that they used and the singer's voice works really, really well. So I don't feel like I have to do much else other than this to get this to sit how I want it to. That being said, though, I think to just like get the compressor to react to this the sound of this voice just a little bit more like focused. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a pretty steep boost in the upper mid range. And again, we set this so that the equalizer is pre-dynamics. And then I'm going to dial in this compressor to get a couple dB of compression. and see what that sounds like.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
That feels really good, actually. The one thing I don't like about this plugin is that when you lower the threshold on the compressor here, it actually like increases the amplitude of the signal. So it kind of messes with your gain staging because it has like automatic makeup gain essentially with the compressor. So that's kind of annoying, but easy to counteract just using the sort of like built-in fader control here.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
Yeah, I think like having this little extra mid-range presence with that nice dark reverb.
In a house this big, who has the time?
That just feels real good to me. A nice vocal massage on my ears. Cool. And then I'm going to try this out because it's just something that I typically do. I'm going to add my little optical compressor in here. So the Waves LA2A emulation is what I pretty much always use on vocals.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
And then I'm just aiming to get like a couple dB of compression on this just to kind of tighten up the sound just a little bit.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
Yeah, that feels dang good. Like I said, we lucked out in that this is such a, like the sound of the timbre of the vocal performance matches so perfectly with the frequency response and the proximity effect of the mic and how they set it up, that like everything I'm doing just works. But it's really easy to like not get the perfect vocal capture, right? So like, yeah, it's not always going to be this easy. And then last but not least, I'm going to slap an EQ on here and just see what happens when I mess around with this. I really like this EQ. This is an emulation of the Mag EQ4, or MOG, whatever. And these are really cool hardware EQs. I've used these. They have them down at Jackpot in Portland. And yeah, they just have this really cool feature that allows, like, it has like a really smooth, ultra high frequency boost that kind of like tapers down into the lower frequencies. So even though you can't really hear 40 kilohertz, and 40 kilohertz doesn't even really exist within the context of this session, which is in 48 sample rate, 48 kilohertz sample rate. That EQ curve tapers down into the audible spectrum, and it just gives you kind of like a nice like sheen to the sound.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? There's an echo about it, one that that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
Yeah. Pretty subtle. I'm not doing anything drastic here. But it just adds that kind of like extra sheen.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
Yeah, that feels good. And again, a lot of people when they're starting out, when they're mixing, feel really timid about using big EQ boosts. So one thing I like about using plugins like this is that it doesn't tell you how much you're boosting unless you click on the thing. And 10 decibels seems like a huge, crazy amount of boost, right? To put it like 2 kilohertz, right? That seems like it might be really nasty, but with this particular plugin and with this particular vocal take, it works. And as I'm adjusting these knobs here, I'm doing it based on what my ears are hearing. I'm not looking constantly at that dB readout right there to tell me like how much I'm boosting on this particular frequency band. I'm using my ears. I'm just listening. All I'm doing is listening and just kind of like vibing out and seeing what feels good with this particular mix. And so I really strongly encourage you to do that as well. If you're just getting started mixing, like don't pay attention as much to what the readout, the numerical readout is telling you. You should pay attention to frequency ranges. That's really important. And it's going to teach you a lot about like what types of things sound like on different instruments, right? But, we're here to do a job, and we need to use the tools available to us to like achieve whatever goals that we're trying to get, right? So it doesn't matter that like based on what you read online or what you saw in like one video where someone was like, if you boost more than 3 dB, you're a fucking idiot or something like that, right? Like, don't listen to that person. Anyone who tells you, like, if you do this, you're a fucking idiot, in terms of mixing, is a fucking idiot and doesn't know what they're talking about, because there's an exception to every single rule, and you shouldn't call people idiots for, like, experimenting and sort of, like, bending those rules, right? So, use your ears. As you develop your ear, you'll just get better and better and better at this over time. It's going to take a long time, though. Like, I've been mixing professionally for, like, 8 years now. Yeah, 8 years. And I'm just starting to feel, like, really confident at what I do. So it just takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of practice. But as you're practicing, don't get yourself caught up in the numbers. Like, oh, I'm getting 12 dB of boost at 16 kilohertz. That seems really extreme. But does it sound extreme, right? On a certain piece of gear, that might sound extreme. In a certain specific use case, that might sound extreme. But not in this instance right here. In here, I think it sounds lovely.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
Like, I feel really good about how that vocal sounds. So, let's move on then. Again, that's kind of like the most important aspect of the mix is that DX7 and the lead vocal there. Now let's kind of work on dialing in the electric drum kit here, so the ace tone. I think this will be pretty easy to get how we want to sound.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV.
bit of touch of ambience is nice. Go for this same processor. A lot of times when I'm mixing, what I try to do is I try to pretend like I'm mixing on a given mixing console. So if I use one of these channel strips, I'm going to use it on most things in that mix unless I'm going for a specific sort of vibe from something else. But I'll try to use the same plugin channel strip for a lot of different stuff within that mix so that it kind of feels like I'm mixing using this mixing console. I mean, I wish I was mixing on this like $500,000 mixing console, but I'm not. I'm here at home on a keyboard and mouse. But anyways.
Outside, light years above you, they're watching everything happen here. I'll be up on my private moon wandering.
I can also use the compressor in this channel strip here to sort of exaggerate the attack on here. So if I leave this as a more slow sort of attack,
there's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
so with the EQ and the compression that I have on here, I feel like using that in combination with the low pass filter here is really important to getting this sound to fit into the mix. Right, it gets really bright, like overly bright. But then when we dial in the low pass filter, it really sort of like gets pillowy and just sits really nice in here.
And we're both drunk and we're watching TV. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in can tell when you're home.
Let's try to add just a little bit more snap to this clav sound here. The DBX 160 is kind of like I don't know what that does. Kind of a famous compressor for adding just that little bit of extra snap to a sound. People use this, especially on like kick and snare, way back, like back in the 70s and 80s, to kind of like just get that little bit of extra attack on sounds. There we go. And then I kind of want to add like a big long reverb trail to this. And I might want to add that same long reverb to other things in the mix too. So I'm going to go ahead and create another stereo. And then I'm going to call this my big verb. Solo safe. Always remember to solo safe your auxes. Then let's create a send to that new track. Boom. And let's slap a reverb on here. I'm not 100% sure. I know I want like a long reverb, kind of make it sound almost like a submarine radar or something like that. But I'm not 100% sure what exactly I want here. This Verb Suite Classics comes bundled with the Slate Everything bundle, and it has like a lot of different hardware emulations in here, so I really like it for that. So if we want to try like a 70s kind of plate reverb sound, we can mess around with that. There's all sorts of different filters that you can apply to stuff. There we go. So for some reason, all of these reverbs seem to be having like a weird distortion kind of issue in there. So let's just try something different. Huh. It's very weird because it's not really like clipping anywhere. again, let's get creative. So that distortion, kind of weird, crispy sound up there, seems to be mostly in the high frequency content. So let's just slap an EQ on this reverb send before the reverb. There we go.
We live on parallel hills, but I can tell
There
when
we go.
you're home in the night, moving circles outside, light years above you.
However, because we've added that EQ pre-reverb on this big reverb track, this is no longer going to work for anything other than this clav sound. So it's kind of just become the clav reverb. So I'm just going to move it down here, and then we're just going to, we're going to call this the clav verb. Rename this send. Boom, boom.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
Okay, and then I do want a big reverb to have in this mix. So let's set up a big reverb again for the second time. And then try it out on the vocals. The vocals probably the most important thing to sound good with this big reverb here.
And we're both drunk, and we're watching TV. There's an echo about it, one
There we go. That's some nice ambience right there.
In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
I think I also want this Juno synth to go to that big verb.
We live on, there's an echo. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time?
Okay. I think we're sitting in a pretty good spot. Let's dial in this drum sound. Drums are already sounding pretty epic. Right? Like that's a pretty huge sound. So it's not like we got a whole lot of work to do on this, but so the hard thing about the drums here is that there's kind of like, there's two distinct things that the drums do, right? There's this build-up section kind of in the middle of the song where the drums are almost entirely just playing the two toms in like these really big chunky drum fills. And then at the end of the song, it shifts into something else almost entirely. So that's going to be a little bit difficult to dial in, but I think we can do this pretty easily. And I think what we're going to end up doing is we're going to end up committing just this section of the mix as its own thing, and then have all of this kind of stuff as its own thing over there too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial in the sound of this section here, and then we're going to commit that as a new clip, essentially. Back in ye olde days, this would be pretty common. This is where the term bouncing comes from, because you would bounce down this one section of the song and then splice it into the reel with the second section of the song here. Like you would essentially create two different mixes and then cut them together using the like splicing on the tape machine. So that wouldn't be like a completely, that would be how you would do this back in the day. So we're going to kind of emulate that sort of process there. And because pretty much for this first section of the song, all I'm going to do is I'm going to send every part of the drum kit through the drum mix, because everything's kind of working together in this section of the song. Like there's no kick and snare drum beat. The kick beat is being carried by the ace tone in this section of the song. So we're just going to send everything through our main drum mix and work on that as a whole. don't think we need to do much here to the drum sound. I do want to just like eke a little bit more attack out of the toms.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the
So just a
night.
little bit of EQ here just to kind of touch up the sound of the toms. And then I also want a little bit of compression here.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night. Moving circles.
And then honestly, that feels really good. I might want a little bit more like room sound in that to kind of like fill it out and make it feel a little bit more ambient. But this is kind of another important lesson when you're mixing stuff is like sometimes you don't need to do a whole lot. Like this section of the song with the drums feels really good the way it is. I don't feel like I need to do a whole lot here. All I'm going to do is going to do some bus processing here. But that's about it. And then we're going to print this section of the song and call that good. One of my favorite drum bus compressors is the Distressor. This is just an emulation of that. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of saturation here too. Slap some compression on the room mics here because I'm not quite getting the sound that I want out of this. Cool. So this is like a weird like really vintage, like tube preamp and compressor plugin. It's an emulation of a bunch of old Telefunken stuff. Sounds pretty cool. Just kind of adds to the heavy, roomy sound of what we're trying to do here.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell.
Yeah, that feels pretty cool to me. Let's listen through the whole section just to see how this all feels together with like the lead up into it and everything. And then we can print this. Because again, I don't think we like, if there's no reason to do a bunch of extra processing, then, don't do a bunch of extra processing. Just let the thing be the way it needs to be.
I'll be up in my private moon, wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
Too loud.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night, moving circles outside, light years above you, they're watching everything happen here. I'll be up on my private moon, wandering. I'll be up.
Okay, that feels really good to me. Before we commit this, because what we're going to do is we're going to commit using the right click and then commit function over here. We're going to commit the drum mix as a whole. But before we do that, we need to mute the acetone stuff because that is also going through the drum mix there. I guess we don't need to do that because we're not going to commit the K-mix. And then I'm going to highlight the region that I want to commit in the timeline, which is about this area right here. Hit right click on my drum mix track, hit commit. This is all good. Do nothing because we are going to use the drum mix for the drums later in the song. And there we go. Yeah. Gonna hit OK. I was gonna render through the whole song, even though we're not gonna use the whole song, and that's kind of fine. We could do this another way by like setting up a a second audio track and then route stuff out to that and then record that second audio track. And you know what? That might actually make more sense. So let's go ahead and cancel this. And we're going to do that. And just to show you how to like set up an audio track in here and then record into that audio track using a bus, because that's a pretty useful technique to be able to get down. So this is going to be, well, what are we going to call this? Like, what do I call it in the thing? Big fat toms. And then we're going to route this out through the 2 bus. I'm going to set up the input to be the drum mix, because that's what we're using anyways. And then record, enable, and input monitor.
How it took so long to get back to you.
There we go. Yeah, this actually makes a lot more sense.
How it took so long to get back to you.
Yeah, this is what we wanted to do the whole time. Okay. So now that that is set up, we've got the routing. So it's taking the same signal as this. And we're just going to record through this middle section, right? So everything that's going through the drum mix is getting recorded onto this track. But we're just going to go through the tom section here. So set it up right here and hit record. I'm going to go to the bathroom while this is recording.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night. Moving circles outside, light years above you. They're watching everything happen here. I'll be up on my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
Okay. So theoretically down here, yep, we got our big fat toms. And drag this back up here with the rest of the drums. Here we go. And then I'm essentially just gonna like mute or delete that whole first half of the song for the other drums, because that's going to now be its own sort of thing here. So we got our big fat toms. What does that sound like with the rim verb? Now we can unmute the rest of our ace tone stuff.
We live on parallel hills, but I can tell when you're home in the night.
Cool. So now we can move on to the final section of the song and dial in our like full drum kit mix here with everything playing. Sorry, my nose is like really squeaky today. And I'm actually gonna like get rid of that processing there. Let's see when the toms hit in here.
All these years forgot. All these years forgot on you proud. All these years forgot. All these years. All these years
Okay.
forgot.
So that feels pretty good. Just like in terms of those toms, I don't think we need to change the processing on there, but everything else kind of sounds like garbage. So we're going to need to completely rebuild this drum mix from the ground up, or not rebuild because we didn't really build a drum mix before, but now we will be building a drum mix. So the snare needs to go to the snare mix. Kick needs to go to the kick mix. Just trying to balance out the level of the rim mics here from left to right.
All these years forgot on you proud. All the room and on my plastic chair, I can see the earth. I see you up there in a constant birth.
I'm going to group together my drums now just so it's easy for me to solo the full drum mix in here. Okay, so it seems like the biggest offender in here is the snare drum. The snare drum's really wimpy sounding. The kick drum is also pretty like boxy sounding, but let's fix the snare drum first. That's like the most important thing right now. Again, because I've been using this SSLG plugin here, I'm going to use it again for the snare drum here. Although I am going to set up a gate on here to gate this a little bit. I don't think it's totally necessary with this song. It's a pretty like organic sounding. Actually, no. Let's see what it sounds like without the gate. And if I need the gate, I'll add it in. Actually, yeah, there's a lot of cymbal bleed in here, so I am going to use the gate. Back and forth. Flip-flopper. This G8 dynamic gate by Unfiltered Audio is on Plugin Alliance, and this is so good for how cheap this plugin is. You can get this on sale for like $30 or something like that, and it's just such an awesome gate plugin for that price range. Obviously, like the Fab Filter stuff is probably way better. I love the Fab Filter stuff. It's just really expensive. That's why I don't have it at home here. So this is my like budget Fab Filter gate here. And I'm going to do that trick that we went over in class to show, or to have the release time of this gate work in time with the mix here. .37, and then what was it? Tempo 2. Note 2 millisecond calculator. There we go. So if we're at 137 for our tempo, that means a quarter note is 438 milliseconds. So the combination of these two things should equal 438. So let's extend this. Sometimes on a gate you have an ability to like put in a side chain to cut out other frequencies. So I'm going to see if cleaning up the low end going to this gate makes it easier to isolate. Yeah, that seems like it's working pretty well. There we go. Again, mostly just looking to like clean up the bleed. I don't want to completely eliminate it. I'm using this as an expander, but it's just allows me a lot more flexibility in terms of what I'm capable of doing in here. because if the snare drum is more isolated from the cymbals and stuff like that, it allows me to push up the mid-range and the high frequency content of this more than I would normally be able to. Because otherwise the cymbals would just get really grating in this snare drum right here. And now I'm going to use a compressor on here to kind of thicken up the sound here. So that's like infinitely better, right? It's fat, it's punchy. Because a drummer, when they're playing this, you can kind of like clearly tell that they're not hitting the drum very hard, and it causes the cymbal bleed and that snare drum mic to be louder because the ratio of sound coming into that mic of cymbal to snare drum is off. And this just kind of clears that up, and it makes it seem like they're hitting the drum harder without them actually hitting the drum harder. So this is like the best way to kind of fudge that, for lack of a better term. And then this kick drum sound is pretty floppy. Yeah, like that's just a horrible kick drum sound. So we're gonna have to finagle this. And one of the big reasons why a lot of these close mics tend to sound like not like you think the instrument, the part of the drum kit should sound like, is because that's not the perspective that we're used to hearing that drum from. So like no one ever, well, I shouldn't say no one ever, but most people don't stick their head inside of a kick drum to hear the sound of the kick drum, right? But then that's where we mic the kick drum from, is like right in front of it or inside of it, which is a position that no one is ever like in, right? So it's just not what you do. And so we need to make it sound more natural by sort of like de-emphasizing the things that make that that setup not work, or make that we need to de-emphasize the things that happen when you put a microphone really, really close to things. So that exaggerated proximity effect, the kind of like weird resonances that get picked up from having that super zoomed in view right there. So let's work on that. Right, all that kind of gross mid-range in there. pretty good. I'm gonna use a gate on this again, or more like an expander again, and get this dialed in. And the reason I'm using this is equally to like get rid of some of the bleed, but also to control the sustain of this instrument. The sustain on this kick drum is like really, really long. So I think just in order to control this a little bit better, and again, we'll use that same trick. 438, I think, was the millisecond to a quarter note in this tempo. So we're actually going to go for a half note here, so just doubling that quarter note time there. And then back this off a little bit. Okay, and then this is going to allow us to slap a compressor on here and not exaggerate the bleed too much. I'm going to use this guy. There's also kind of like a in the kick drum that I want to just de-accentuate a little bit. So I'm going to use my EQ here. This is coming through the gate in a way that I don't like, so I'm just going to... There we go. Just, I'm using clip gain there to like reduce the amplitude of just those parts before it hits the gate in that track there. Okay, and on this one, this is a kick out mic. You can hear it's like a lot more pillowy sounding. And I'm actually going to do some crazy fun stuff in here to exaggerate the low end in here. So I'm going to use the BX subsynth. There we go. And then we're going to use the classic program equalizer trick here. And so if you like turn up the boost and the attenuate at the same time on this specific equalizer, it tends to push up the really low end, but then kind of like almost do like a little dipsy turvy thingy here. I mean, you can look up more info on this if you want, but it's a pretty handy tool to use. And then I'm going to dial in sort of like the overall sound of the snare drum here. Again, going back to my SSL. And then this kick drum sound needs a little help to like help it come through and be punchy. A lot of people like to use a optical compressor on kick drum. Actually, also like I feel like this kick out needs a gate on it to help control it. So I'm going to use side chaining to side chain the kick in mic because it has a little bit less bleed to the kick out mic, and so that both of these things are like opening and closing at the same time. So I'm just like external side chain here, bus one here. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. I don't really like the compressor on there. Okay. We only got like about half an hour left on this song that we can, before I have to go. I am probably going to stop explaining what I'm doing as much as just like doing it so that we can get as much done on this as we can. But for the three of you who are still here, maybe if you are, I don't know if you are actually here, feel free to ask questions while I'm going through this. Okay, so I'm mostly using this mic as like a kind of thickener to the drum sound, adding a little bit of extra texture in there. This compressor is a fun one. This is an emulation of the Compex compressor, which is it's just a weird thing. It's a pretty weird compressor. I love it. I first used one of these in at the Unknown. I think Phil Alverum had one that was over there for a long time, and I really liked. I got to like that thing a lot, especially for room mics. Okay, I think we need to do the sidechain trick with the snare drum here, tying the this to a gate in the room mics again, just because they're really hitting the snare drum really quietly, and you can really tell in the room mics, like if I bypass the compressor and everything. Like, listen to how much louder the kick drum is than the snare drum in this. So set up this side chain here.
When our rings collide,
Okay, feeling pretty good. And then I'm just gonna do my kind of standard bus setup on this right here. So I'm going to use the fake mix bus for the SSL G series, which is what we're using. Turn up the drive.
all these years,
Get a little bit of saturation on here, like if we were mixing through a real mixing console, we would have the summing amp saturation from the bus, the groups on the mixing console. Gonna use my favorite drum bus compressor here, Distressor Emulation.
all these years, forgot on your private moon, on these empty lakes, yours has all the
Compressors that have a mix control are the best thing ever, because I can dial in like really crazy settings here to like push the drum sound over the edge and get it to sound really cool, without, totally messing it up. What else did I want in here? I feel like it needs just like a touch more high end to it. using a little bit of EQ in here to like get the kick and the snare to just sit just right in this mix here. The resonant high pass filter on kick drum is like my favorite trick ever, because it just tightens up the low end so much, because you can see it's cutting off at a very steep angle, like everything below a certain range, but then it emphasizes just at the point where it starts to cut off, and it gives a really great effect. Cool. 20 minutes left. Can we do it?
I'll be up in my private moon, wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
Oh, I forgot that I forgot that this was going through that mixer, so we actually don't need the low end boost here because we're doing it later. So I actually didn't need that high end boost on the drum bus. Yeah. Okay, let's figure out what the heck is going on with the bass in here.
And we're both drunk and we're watching TV.
Whoa. Okay. One thing that I want to do is I don't want this to go to the bass mix. I want to see what this sounds like in stereo. Like if we use something to widen out the sound of this bass a little bit to make room in the center of the mix for this sound right here. So I just want to see. I just want to know what it sounds like. So we're going to send it directly to the 2 bus, and we're just going to pop on a couple different things to see what it sounds like.
We're watching TV. There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room.
I actually like that a lot.
In a house this big, who has the time?
And then what we're going to do is we're going to sidechain the Acetone kick drum to this bass synth right here, so that when the kick drum hits, it clamps down on this little thing right on this this bass sound right here. So we're going to set this to 3. It's going to go out of 3. Unity, pre-fader.
And we're both,
We're going to tell this to
and we're both drunk. And it took so long to get back to you.
such a weird part to have in the song. So just something to distinguish these two sounds from each other, because otherwise they don't really have a lot of distinguishing characteristics. I put some... This has like a mono chorus based on the Boss CE2 pedal on here. A little bit of distortion.
We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night. Moving circles outside, light years above you, they're watching everything happen here. Happen here. Happen here. I'll be up on my private moon wandering. Private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. It happened here. I'll be up on my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
Setting up a delay bus in here. Let's tempo map the song so we can get these rhythmic delays. So changing the tempo to 137. Of course, that's going to fuck up all my markers, but whatever.
I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
And I want a really dark
I'll be
delay
up in
here.
my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
There we go. That's a nice, dark, warbly kind of, maybe a little too much warble, actually, but
I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
and then something like
I'll be up in my private moon.
the Space Echo has a built-in spring reverb that it uses. So let's see what it sounds like.
I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you.
5 more minutes.
We live on parallel lines. I'll be up in my private moon wandering.
Gonna create a mono delay bus to kind of pan opposite or mess around with this here.
I'll be up in my private moon.
Gonna go to the guitar mix because this is specific to a guitar sound. Then we're gonna send this to that delay.
Private moon, wondering how it took so long to get back to you. Wandering, I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. 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 I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get down. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night.
Okay, cool. I gotta be done. I feel pretty happy with where it's sitting right now. Honestly, like if we did a final balancing and just did some automation on some key parts here to like create some movement in different parts of the song, I would consider this done. But let's just listen through it one last time, and we'll talk about, or I'll point out anything as we're going through it. Yeah, I would definitely add some automation in here on either some of these reverb sends or something.
Now this party is empty. And we're both drunk and we're watching TV.
I would also probably like have this first verse have less reverb and delay on it.
There's an echo about it, one that swallows the room. In a house this big, who has the time? I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long to get back to you. We live on parallel hills, and I can tell when you're home in the night. Moving circles outside, light years above you, they're watching everything happen here. I'll be up on my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wandering. I'll be up in my private moon wondering how it took so long
Just a quick
to
note,
get back to you.
The only reverb I have on the backing vocals is on this, just a little bit of room reverb on the mix group for the backing vocals, because typically when you're working on a mix, you don't want to oversaturate everything with reverb, and we already have kind of like a lot of reverb and delay going on this stuff, and it takes away from the primary reverb. And when you listen to really great mixes, it's like that vocal reverb has to capture you, right? It's got to be just like dank.
All these years forgot on your pride.
Yeah. So that feels pretty good. Again, just mostly automation stuff I would do in here, but I feel pretty happy with like the timbrel and the timbrel and the sound of everything, essentially, right? Like it feels good. I'm pretty happy with it. It just needs that little extra bit of spice to kind of take it to the next level. Yeah, I gotta get going, but this was fun. I hope people watching had fun. If people like it, I'll do more. So I guess hit the like button if if you like this and you want to see more of this type of content, because I'm happy to do it. It's pretty fun. Yeah. Smash that like and subscribe. I'll see you next time.